Now that we have a really good understanding of what Node is, how it works, and why it allows us to execute JavaScript code through compiling that code down to machine code, and then through the operating system or through utilities that it has to communicate with the operating system, it gains access to the machine's hardware, which allows us to create extremely complex JavaScript applications on our computers rather than just in the browser. Before we can start executing these JavaScript applications, we first need to go ahead and install Node itself on our machine. To do that, let's go ahead and open up a browser. Here I've got Microsoft Edge open. And let's do a search for Node. And one of the first ones that comes up should be Node.js.org. Node.js is where we can go down and download the latest binaries for our operating system that contain a particular version of Node. The reason why I stress that it has a particular version of Node is that each installer will only install a single version of Node. And one of the things that we have here that can become an issue is that as you begin writing programs in Node, the versions of Node will change over time. The current version is 12. The long-term support version, in other words, the one that we use for production, the most stable version of Node, is at 10.16. And as time goes, the 12 or 13 might become the long-term support, and this version 10 will drop off into an old version of Node that is no longer supported. When this happens, we run into situations that we will have code and different projects that might be in 3 or 4 different versions of Node. We could have really old versions that we've got some old applications in. We might have some productions running in the LTS, and then we might have some running in current. And those versions can change over time. Well, if we need to maintain all of those different applications with those different versions of Node, we need to be able to execute our code for those projects against the version of Node that they were written in. Well, if we install a single binary package, we will only have that version. So if I need to go modify some code or update a project that is on the LTS, I will have to uninstall the current version and then go install the LTS, work on that code, and then if I have a really old Node package or Node application that I've written that I need to go modify or update to a current version, I might need to go install the version of Node, the historic version of Node that it was written in. And to do that, I would have to uninstall the LTS and then install it, and then if I wanted to come back to the current. Anyways, I think you get the point. Being that you only get a single binary package when you're installing Node from Node's website, you can run into problems. Now, that's not that big of a deal right now while you're learning how to program, but as we're writing more and more projects and as you're learning over the next little while, the Node versions could change. And therefore, you will actually have projects written into different versions of Node. To solve this, the community has actually come up with a utility called the Node Version Switcher. And the Node Version Switcher, it allows us to install a single utility on our machine that provides us with the ability to install multiple versions of Node at the same time, and then simply switch between them when we need a different version to work on a different project. So today we're going to install the Node Version Switcher on our machine, and then we are going to install the LTS version of Node as well as the current version. And then we're going to learn the commands in NVS that allow us to switch between the different versions as we need them. On the NVS website, there is the option down here for a Windows installer package, and that is available through GitHub. And we're going to go ahead and install the latest version, which as of this video is 1.5.3. We're going to download the MSI package. And yes, we want to go ahead and download it to our machine. And once it is done downloading, we're going to go ahead and run that package. When we run that package, we're going to go ahead and go through and install it, just the defaults that it has. Right. So accept their license and agreement, click install. It'll just go ahead and do all of its installation. It's not a very complex installer. Once it's done, go ahead and click Finish. We can go ahead and close our browser. We really don't need it anymore. Now, because Node Version Switcher as well as Node are command line utilities, meaning that they're more of an operating system based program and it interacts directly with the operating system rather than a graphical user interface application like we're used to. Like Internet Explorer is a graphical user interface because it provides us the ability to click and type and interact with it graphically rather than through a command line. So if we go back to our Node versions right here, for Node.js, we'll pop those up just so that we've got them for when we're doing our installation. So to interact with NVS and Node, we need to open up a terminal or a command prompt on Windows. So we go ahead and type CMD inside of the Finder, and we should see this command prompt app. When you open up the command prompt, you are going to have this window right here. And let's see if we can open up. Oops, I don't want the viewer. I don't want the magnifier, so let's shut that off. No magnifier. We want to go ahead and increase the font size for our command utility right here. So let's go to Properties. Let's go to Font. Let's increase it to 24. Click OK. And that's much better. Now we can see that font better on this video. All right. So we installed NVS. So to double check that we have access to that command line application, we can type in the command for it, which is just NVS, and hit enter. Now, if that installation hadn't been successful, we would have gotten a message that said NVS is a command not found, or the command isn't understood. Here you can see, though, we've got a text-based interactive console that came up right here. And since there's no Node installed yet, or no version of Node, it gives us this default interactive way of installing our first Node version. Now, there are other options here. Older versions of Node, nightly builds of the current Node, as well as io.js, which was an older competitor of Node that got merged into Node later on. And then there's Node itself. So we're going to go ahead and stick with just option A, which is Node, so make sure the brackets are around it. And now we're going to install our first version of Node. If we look here at the website, the current version is a 12.11.1. So if we switch back to our terminal, it is the first one in the list, so make sure the brackets are around it. Hit enter. And when we hit enter on this, it is going to go ahead and download the binary packages from the remote repository. It's going to extract them because they're most likely in a compressed zip archive or a gzip. Once it's done extracting, then it will take those binaries and install them into our Windows operating system so that Node then has its hooks into our operating system so it can communicate with it. And once it's done doing that, we will then have access to Node through the command prompt. Because again, it doesn't have a graphical user interface. It is a command line utility to execute JavaScript code. So now we've got it installed, you can see right here, this information right here is telling us that this particular Node version, that is a 64-bit version to match our operating system, has now been added to our path. When it gets added to our path, that means we have the ability to execute it from the command line. So if I type node -v, and the -v just says give me the version of Node, we can see that we do have access to Node, otherwise it would have come back with a command not found, and it did provide us with the version, which is 12.11.1. So now we have a version of Node. It is installed, we have access to it, we could actually begin executing JavaScript right now if we wanted to. But we also want to install the LTS version, which is the 10.16.3 version. So let's go ahead and jump back to our console and let's do NVS again. And instead of that initial setup where we had no Node and therefore it asked us to install one, you now see that it says we have a node and it's going to let us select which version we want to use. Well, currently we only have one version installed, so we only have that 1A option, and it's the one that we already have active. Instead, we're going to go down here to download another version, hit enter. Again, we're going to go back into the node list, and we are going to go down through the versions of Node until we find the one that we're looking for, which is the 10.16.3. So 10.16.3 is what I'm on right now. So that is the long-term support version. So we go ahead and hit enter again. It's going to download it, extract it, install it, and then it's going to add it to our path so that we can access it in our command prompt. Give it a minute to do that. And once it's done installing, you're going to see that it will actually remove this version from our path. Now, it doesn't delete it from our machine, but it does remove it from our path, and then it will actually use the new version that we're installing. It will have a new path added. And here's the example right here. It says we have removed, so minus equals, we have removed the 12.11.1 from the path, and we have added the 10.16.3 to the path. And now if we type node minus v, we should see that the currently active version of Node is version 10.16.3. So now we can switch between the versions. So if I wanted to go back to the current, which is the one we're going to want to use, I can just type NVS. I can go up to A, so make sure my brackets are on A. And you can see right here it says that 10.16.3 is the current node available to the system. Well, once I hit that for A, you'll see that it will remove the 10.16.3 from the path and will add the 12.11.1 to the path. And if we type node minus v, we should see that it is the 12.11.1. And if we type NVS again, we should see current next to the 12.11.1. And then we can control C out of that. And let's check again, node minus v. We made no changes, so it should just be the 12.11.1. So here we now have Node installed. We have two different versions of Node, and through NVS we have the ability to switch between versions of Node as we need them based on the application that we're modifying or editing. One thing to keep in mind is that when you close the terminal or the command prompt that you're in, when you reopen it, we go to CMD, click on command prompt. If I type node now, node minus v, and I hit enter, you will see node is not recognized as an internal external command. In other words, it doesn't know what node is, but it still knows what NVS is. But you will notice we don't have current next to either of these, which means by default, no node is available until you select one. So we're going to stick with the 12.11.1, which is the current. So I've got A selected, hit enter. Now when we type node minus v, node minus v. Let's exit out of that really quick. Exit, okay, node minus v. I should see 12.11.1. Excellent. And you guys, in the next video, I'll show you exactly what happened right here. So ignore this for right now. We were actually executing an inside of Node.